Play like a champion today. It's the Fighting Irish Squad Show. Everything Notre Dame Fighting Irish every week. Breaking down the biggest news and game-changing plays the way only Locked On Podcast Network can. Wake up the echoes. The Fighting Irish Squad Show starts now.
Well, hello and welcome to our very first midweek Irish Squad Show. I'm your host, Allison Hayes. I've been covering the Irish right here in South Bend for more than 20 years, and I am the host of ABC57 Kickoff, a live Notre Dame football pregame show based right here in South Bend on Notre Dame's campus. And first of all, to get us started, we want to give a shout out to our sponsor, and it is brought to you today by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You can download the app today. Well, today on our show, we have a lot to unpack. We had our first show was the loss last weekend to Texas A&M. So let's get started here. I'm going to take you around the horn with a couple of legends to get us kicked off. How about you, Allen?
Hello, everyone. I'm Allen Pinkett, two-time All-American, class of 1986. And I'm wondering, with the problems the defense had the last 2 weeks, will they be able to stop this high-powered Boilermaker offense?
You don't hear that very often. How about you, Reggie?
Reggie Brooks, 1993 All-American. My take is very similar to Allen's. I'm nervous about what we're going to do about Purdue's offense. We have not had anything going well for us from a defensive standpoint. So that is a huge, huge issue, and I'm really wondering to see which team is going to show up. I mean, the offense has come back and really gotten their feet, sea legs under them. But defensively, if you told me Notre Dame was going to score 40 points at home and come up with a L, no way, no way.
Tyler?
Yeah, I'm Tyler Wojciak. I'm probably the one who has the least business being here compared to the rest of the crew. I am the host of Locked On Irish every day. I graduated from Notre Dame, did not play football, did play Interhall though. And when I look at this team and when I look at where everything is at, I understand why there's frustration. It hasn't been great these last couple of weeks, but Notre Dame has played 6 straight top 10 opponents dating back to last year. I think we're just used to seeing that. Purdue's going to be a little bit different. I think the result will be much more in favor of Notre Dame.
All right, well, we have a packed show. Today's episode, we're going to take another look at the devastating loss to Texas A&M. We're going to talk about how much of this falls on the shoulders of defensive coordinator Chris Ash. Should Marcus Freeman make some changes there? We'll also talk about the improvements on offense. It's not all bad, right, guys? And, of course, quarterback C.J. Carr and what still needs to be corrected. And is there a path to the playoffs? We'll break it down coming up.
All right, Allison, one thing that I've been thinking about lately is when you're 0-2, not a whole lot is going right. There hasn't been a whole lot of fun, but there wasn't a whole lot of fun last year after Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. There was a lot of tension, and we hear about the great culture of the Notre Dame football program, the great culture within that locker room. That proved out to be true. It's a big reason why they won 13 straight games. But this year, we're having the same conversations. I actually think Notre Dame might be in a better place today than they were last year. I understand with Chris Ash, the defensive coordinator, there isn't a whole lot going right for this group, but I don't think it's as bad as it may seem. What do you guys think?
Well, I guess I could stomach a loss from Miami. It's because they were a top 10 team. I thought that the quarterback for Miami was the best we would see all season. But then when Texas A&M came in, especially since I lived in Houston for 23 years and had to deal with all those Aggies, that one hurt just a little bit more. And the concern with me is a lack of a pass rush. The fact that when we're sending 4 people, we're not getting to the quarterback, really not getting any pressure on the quarterback. So I know there were lots of guys running wide open in the defensive backfield, but the lack of pass rush concerns me. And I think we either have to get greater effort out of that front four, or we're just going to have to start sending 5 and 6 people every time to put that pressure on the quarterback. I know that uh, defensive coordinator Ash was reluctant to do that against this quarterback from Texas A&M because he's got some legs, he can run, and he did hurt us with his legs a couple of times. But I think that Notre Dame needs to force the action, and if dude breaks out and runs, then the safeties just have to go get him.
For me, the issue is tackling. I mean, this has happened a few years before, and it's, rearing its ugly head now. But these missed tackles that, that took place this past week, one of them led to a touchdown. The other, again, were able to get out and get more yards. I need to see this defense play more together and more aggressively. It just seems like the secondary is kind of back on their heels as opposed to last year where they were more of an attacking style defense. And we're getting pressure. And I'm gonna shout out my guy again, but Jack Kaiser was one of the best pass rushing linebackers Notre Dame has had in a while. And who is that going to be that guy? But I agree with Allen wholeheartedly. We've got to get some kind of rush. We cannot just allow quarterbacks to sit back and pick us apart. Defensive backs, as having been one for a year in Notre Dame, it's not easy to chase around that field. And, after 3 seconds, you're expecting either the quarterback is sacked or something good is happening for the defense because chasing guys around is not fun. So I've been on the back end on the back end of that as a defensive back, and chasing guys around, you can get lost, and especially if you got some big wide receivers. I'm not the tallest guy, so I can sympathize, but it does help when you play a more aggressive style defense and you as a defensive back can be a little more aggressive and handsy and hands-on with the receivers. It definitely helps you out because you kind of get into a rhythm. But if you're constantly on your heels, it's not going to go well.
Well, kind of to your point, Tyler, about did we sort of overreact? Did we freak out? Is everything going to be okay after having a few days to sort of digest all of this? I'm kind of both ways on that. Some of it, it's like, okay, yes, Notre Dame is 0-2, but they lost both of those games to 2 top 10 teams or ranked teams, and it was a 4-point total loss in those 2 games. There's some things there that were improved. We saw the offense get better from week 1 to week 3, but game 2, we saw the run game improve, and that was a big issue. The week before, they had just 78 rushing yards against Miami. In the first game, second game, 162 rushing yards against Texas A&M. They had the 3 touchdowns. And then you saw finally the special teams blocked punt. That was great. We saw defense get an interception. These were all things that we were used to seeing from this Notre Dame team last season that we did not see against Miami. We got to see some of that positive things happening. But my biggest issue, and I guess concern, and you've touched on a couple of them, and I'll kind of reiterate what you're saying there, but you talk about the defense not getting pressure on guys. Well, they right now are tied for dead last at 133 in sacks this season, just 1 so far. That is not a good number. They're also completely dead last all by themselves for tackles for loss with just 4 in these first 2 games and 108th overall total defense. So those are concerning issues, and the missed tackles, and we can get more into that. But, that's where, my next question is, how much of that does fall on to the new defensive coordinator? A big thing when he walked in the door was, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel. I'm inheriting a great defense. So what's changed? I know Notre Dame lost several players, and some of them were key players, but they do have a lot of talented players still on that team. Why are they not making more attempts to rush the quarterback? Why are they not being as aggressive? Why are they missing tackles? That's something that is a fundamental. If they could tackle last year and these guys were on the team last year, how come they can't tackle this year? You know, and maybe you guys can answer those questions. What has changed in that sense, and how much of that does fall on to Chris Ash?
Well, I'll start this off.
You go ahead. Yeah, Reggie.
You play defense. It falls on Chris, but it really falls on Coach Freeman. He's the head man, and he's a defensive coach. So, you know, he can see what's happening. I mean, you know, he's very intelligent. He knows the game. He sees the issues. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's his team, and he's going to have to take ownership of what's going right and also what's going wrong. And he's done that. But he's got to make some decisions. So I'm not going to sit here and just dump on Chris Ash. I don't know the guy, and I'm not a big fan of like dumping on people. But again, as a defensive coordinator, he has to see what's happening. He's not blind. But at the end of the day, this doesn't fall on Chris Ash. It falls on Marcus Freeman because he is the head coach. He owns all that happens, whether it's offense, defense, or special teams, because that's the role that he's in. So I'm not going to go, you know, and everybody else is called for to be fired or whatever, and that's, you know, people have their opinions. But like you said, the basic aspects of the game, why are we, you know, again, I'm not at practice, but it's obvious they're not tackling or practicing tackling in practice. They couldn't be, because too many times I'm seeing guys, they hit, but no one's wrapping up. No one's wrapping up. And if the most basic thing about defense is tackling. I don't need a big hit. I don't need a highlight reel. I need you to get that guy on the ground. Period. End of story. It doesn't have to be, doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to be vicious. I need that guy on the ground so we can get off the field. And that starts with practice. You can't practice with dummies. Dummies don't move. You have to practice tackling by tackling people. And I know you have the whole injury issue, and that does come into play. But this game is a physical game. You can't just, grab a soft ring or grab a dummy and think, hey, that'll get it done, because it won't. You've got to practice because you play like you practice. You play like you practice, and the missed tackles are a direct reflection on how they're practicing.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't lay some blame on the coaches, namely Chris Ash and Reggie. I think it's very important that you point out Marcus Freeman. But I put most of it on the players, because the defensive coordinator can't go out there and defend the pass. Marcus Freeman can't go out there and tackle anybody. So I think it's more on the players. Maybe it's the same system as last year, but the players aren't playing with that aggressiveness they need to go up and make a play. They're not running like their hair's on fire to the play, and they're not playing the way they did last year. I mean, Christian Gray or both cornerbacks were stuck on their receivers last year, where when I watched the game Saturday night, these receivers were beating our DBs by 5 and 6 yards. They were so wide open, they couldn't help but catch the ball because nobody was around them. So,
but Alan, how much time did they have in the back in the quarterback to throw the ball? As I said, chasing receivers around, it's not easy. And if you're beyond 3 seconds chasing a guy, it's not going to go well.
That's the former DB in you advocating for the DBs.
Yes, it is. You got to get some pressure on them guys up front so it can make our life a little easier on the back end. It works together.
Yeah. But I would like to see better. Now, I know the guys want to win. I know the guys are playing hard, but there just needs to be a little more nastiness, a little more aggressiveness I need to see. And maybe it's one of those, they got to make sure they hit and that paint comes off their helmet and splatters on the other team.
Yeah, I think you're both onto something here. To be honest, I think it's a combination of both these things. The players aren't playing as fast. They're not playing as nasty because I don't think they know where they need to be on any given play. And I think, especially against Miami, whenever Miami was running the ball, it's not like they ran all over Notre Dame. They only averaged a little over 4 yards per carry. Notre Dame actually averaged more yards per carry than Miami in that game. But I don't think anyone was watching that saying like, oh, Notre Dame has established the run. They're going to run away with this. But it felt like the linebackers were playing on their heels a little bit, like they didn't know where their gaps were. Maybe that's because the D-line moves a lot now on Notre Dame's. But if you don't know where your gaps are, you're not going to accelerate through the hole. And I think you see it in the secondary as well. Yeah, they're not getting any sort of a pass rush. So if you have to cover a guy, especially one like Mario Craver or Casey Concepcion for 5 seconds, it's probably not going to work out well for anyone. So I'm hoping that this week Marcus Freeman steps in and, to your point, Reggie, recognizes that, hey, this ain't working. Let's throw it out. I mean, it's Purdue. Yeah, they have good players and they have some guys who maybe could get some playing time at Notre Dame. But like if Notre Dame ran base cover 2 man defense, they should be able to win that game. So I think they need to simplify it so that the players know exactly where they go. And when they know where to go, they get there quicker. They're going to play with more violence, some nastiness, and I think you'll see a big change on the defense.
That's exactly what I wanted to touch on. Remember hearing Marcus Freeman say he wanted violence, and every fan, every player out there, you felt that in your bones, and we aren't seeing that from this team. And I think that's a great point. You can tell there's miscommunication. The guys don't seem even, when they're trying to line up, they don't seem like they know where they're going or where they're supposed to be. And that's huge. You cannot play freely if you're not completely sure of what you're doing, where you're supposed to be, what those assignments are. So yes, simplifying for sure. And, Marcus has said in his post-game press conference, and then he kind of changed it a little bit, but it was like, he's not going to step in and get involved. And then it was like, well, maybe I will step in and be a little more hands-on. So we could see some difference there. And to your point, talking about that secondary, Allen, just some numbers for you. I love these numbers. I love stats. Pro Football Focus, and I hate to pick out one guy or two guys, but the lowest graded player in coverage right now for Notre Dame is cornerback Christian Gray. He was targeted this season so far 17 times. In those 17 times, he's given up 10 receptions for 112 yards, about 11 yards per reception, and 54 yards after the carry. His average depth of target, 15.6 yards. So that tells you that they are going deep and they're going after him. And he has the ability to make them pay, but he's not been doing it as consistently. And that's something that Marcus really harped on this week too, is just consistency. So hopefully we will see some more of that. Hey, let's take our first time out here and hear from our sponsors. And then when we come back, we're going to dive in more. We'll talk a little bit more about that Purdue offense that you guys are worried about, Allen and Reggie. And we'll talk about some improvements on Notre Dame's offense coming up.
Yeah, Allison, to your point, the only player who's really delivered right now for Notre Dame in the secondary is Leonard Moore. But you know who else can deliver for you? That would be DoorDash. And today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, so it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. So for Notre Dame, Leonard Moore might have been the only player who delivered for the Irish defense against Texas A&M. Moore finished with an interception, 2 pass breakups, and only allowed 1 11-yard reception despite being targeted 5 times in the game. The secondary as a whole might be in disarray, but Moore continues to prove he is one of the best cornerbacks in all of college football. When the pressure was on, he came through. No hesitation, no delay. And just like Leonard Moore delivers for Notre Dame, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th.
All right. Well, talking about this Purdue offense, it's a rebuild for Purdue, but they've already surpassed their win total from last season. So we're looking at a very different Purdue team. And just some numbers for you offensively. They're averaging 27 points per game so far, 271 yards passing, 119 yards rushing. Quarterback Ryan Brown, he is 56 for 8 of 88. He's got 4 interceptions, 786 yards passing, 5 touchdowns. But what's impressive, I think, about Purdue is how well they played against USC. They lost to the Trojans, but they were right there with them. They gave them an actual game compared to what we've seen from them in the past. They got completely run over by teams, including Notre Dame last year. And they were able to put some up versus USC. Brown, the quarterback, he was 61.5% on his passes, 305 yards passing. He had a passing touchdown. He also had a rushing touchdown, but that was actually off of a botched play. They tried to do a trick play, and it didn't go well. And he scooped up the fumble, returned it 34 yards for the touchdown. But things to keep in mind here, fellas, when you're talking about this defense kind of bringing it together, he threw 3 interceptions in this game against USC, and he got sacked 3 times. So this is an opportunity where your guys can let it loose and go after them.
Well, Ryan Brown, it's weird because he played last year, and then he transferred to North Carolina, and then right before the season started, he transferred back. Yeah, so I guess he missed wearing that black and gold, and so yes, he has had some success throwing the football, and yes, he did throw 3 interceptions against USC, which sort of aided USC's cause. But the thing that kind of scares me about Purdue, it's hard to get a read on them because I sort of look at them like Marshall 2 years ago, where they had all those people that transferred in. I guess it's what Purdue has 55 new players on that team.
Oh,
So
wow.
kind of hard to scout with a new coach, bringing some of his players. So I mean, it's a hard team to scout, and it's going to be one of those, as you go, you'll get a feel for what they want to do. Fortunately, there's some film you've seen, and the USC film would be the most credible film. But I think that if you thought it's the same team that they put that 66-7 beat down on, it's going to be a totally different team. So once again, Notre Dame has to go back to the drawing board and come up with something that's going to work. But I'm much more confident against Purdue, especially on offense.
Well, the thing that I'm going to be looking at is, to your point, Allison, the interceptions. But why was he throwing interceptions? Probably because he was under duress and pressure, things that we've struggled to do against the quarterback. So if we're able to get pressure on the quarterback, I can see some similar, things happening for Notre Dame. But we got to get pressure on him. We got to get off a block as a defensive lineman, our tackles and our ends, and get to the quarterback. So you can have those, Leonard Moores and Christian Gray can get back on track because the front end is aiding the back end. And then defensively, I just don't see Purdue being able to stop our offense. But the one thing, and we'll get on to talk about this, is the offensive line. They have got to become more unified and cohesive as a group more consistently. They have the talent, they have the capability to move guys off the ball and give some running lanes. But too many times I saw against Texas A&M and at Miami, our offensive line was just disjointed in terms of the blocking scheme as to what they were trying to do. And that goes back to, like I said, with the offensive line, that group has to be of one mind. And that requires guys to step in the right direction. If you're blocking back, everybody has to be on the same page, and you got to be able to trust the guy next to you. And too many times, again, A&M, I'm seeing guys, basically allow them to split a double team. Should never happen. That should never happen. So I'm going to be looking to get Notre Dame back on track, and this is a good game to do that. Nothing against Purdue, but we should handle them readily and put up some points. And instead of averaging 3.5, 4 yards a carry, we better be upwards of 6+. I mean, with those two running backs, come on. You got two of the best running backs in the country. We should be averaging against this Purdue defense. If we're not averaging 5.5 to 6 yards a carry, it wasn't a good game. I'm just saying it right now. It wasn't a good game.
Yeah, and Reggie, I'm just gonna reiterate what you said about the offensive line being on the same page, because for a Notre Dame running game, I haven't seen this many guys run free and make a tackle in a few years. I mean, guys unblocked and running free on the line of scrimmage. So yes, you need to have them on the same page. And I think this is an offensive line that is built to run the ball more than throw the ball. They don't want to back up. They want to, those big boys, they want to lean forward and move forward and run block. And oh God, I just would like to see Notre Dame run the ball more than they throw it, because Jeremiah Love is so explosive. You can just see every time he gets the ball, he makes a 4-yard run exciting, but he's so explosive and has, so much, energy when he runs. And Price, just a nice change of pace, because just when the defense thinks they have the speed down to go after Jeremiah Love, here comes Jarian Price. He's a little bit faster, so they don't get to him as quick. So yes, we need that offensive line on the same page, Reggie.
I honestly hope it's like last year where Jeremiah Love is effectively out of the game by the second quarter because Purdue just gave up. I don't think it's going to be a repeat of last year when it was 42-0 at halftime. Ryan Walters, the coach of Purdue, was looking in the Purdue student section to find some students who might be able to come out, throw some pads on and assist. But unfortunately, all the students had already left at that point in time. So he really had no backup there in that situation. But this Purdue team is better. But if Notre Dame is not able to win on the line of scrimmage on both sides, it might be time to panic. It might be time to spend an extra hour at the Basilica or go to the grotto and say a prayer, because I don't know what else you can do to fix things, because this is not a good Purdue offensive line. They're averaging 2.5 yards per rush. That is 129th in the country. They have allowed 19 tackles for loss through 3 games. Last week, USC sacked Ryan Brown 5 times, and they had 10 total tackles for loss. So if this Notre Dame defensive line cannot get pressure on Purdue, they're in serious trouble. And on the other side of the ball, to your point, Reggie, if they're not averaging at least 5.5 yards per carry, it doesn't even have to be Jeremiah Love. It could be Price. It could be Aeneas Williams. It could be the freshman, Nolan James Jr. They should be able to run the ball at will. So even if they don't win 66-7, it should be dominant, and anything less than that is pretty concerning.
I would say that it has to be dominant from here on out. You know how some teams run up the score because not all the people that vote are able to watch the games. So sitting at number 24 with their ranking, they need to move up. And the way to move up a lot of times with people that don't watch your games is win on the scoreboard by such a margin that you have no other reason to think that this team is better than the 0-2 that they are.
And it's an opportunity we've heard Marcus Freeman say that the identity of this team is supposed to be O-line and D-line driven, and we've not really seen that. So this is a really good opportunity for them to establish that and hopefully get a little bit of confidence to help them moving forward. And, we're kind of transitioning now where we've really put it on the defense. Now let's give them some props a little bit. Let's give this offense a little bit of love and talk about some of the good things that have happened. And when you look at the improvement from week 1 to week 2, we touched on that and the improvements in the run game. But is there a player for you guys that really stood out offensively that whether you were surprised or you expected it, but that really sort of showed you what they were made of and you said, all right, I'm taking notice and this is something to build off of?
Well, I'll go ahead and start. You go ahead, Reggie.
No, I was going to say I like where Eli Reardon is because I really feel that is, and I would like to actually see more two tight end sets because I think that would add to that. But watching him again, he struggled. The first game, he led the team in catches, but he also led the team in drops. So he was a marked improvement in catching the football. And I really believe because, again, more downfield throws. When I look at C.J. Carr, he is not a dink and dunk quarterback. This guy has a great feel for the game. He has a great touch, and he's a downfield thrower that, you put him back there. He has good pocket presence. He can deliver a good football, and you saw that more, with the guys that, Malachi Fields, he averaged over 20 yards a catch. Guys were averaging. We had 4 guys averaging double digits in receptions. I mean, not receptions, but in yards per catch. And that is the thing where, again, it's not that quick game that you need. You don't need to protect him. And I hope they saw that in this game. You let him get the ball downfield, because I saw it in the spring ball when he delivers a great ball, great touch, and he's not a runner. So stop that, first of all, and let the man throw the ball downfield, because he has some playmakers that can go up and get it. Malachi Fields, 6'4", 215 pounds. Jaden Greathouse, a big physical, not as big as Malachi, but then you have Eli Reardon, who can get down the middle of the field and put a lot of pressure on those safeties to where they can't go out and cover over the top of the outside receivers. You have what you need right there with what his capabilities. And I keep going back to this, and I apologize to whoever's listening, but when the quarterback coach said, this is back when practice, before the season started, when he said we're still figuring out what these guys can do. They've been there for 2 years. How do you not know what those guys can do? And that was concerning from that standpoint, because again, in a spring game, the spring game before, I saw what this kid was capable of. He is very, very well. He understands the game. He knows how to deliver a good football, and he gets it to the players where they want it. So why are you trying to run him like Riley Leonard? That's not his game. This guy's a pocket quarterback. He can deliver a good ball. Not that he can't run, but that's just not his game. He's not going to go out and do a Josh Allen. This kid he's cerebral. He's going to get the ball to work to his playmakers, and he's shown that. So that's what I would like to see from this offense, is him take another step in that maturation process, because again, he hasn't really played a lot of games, and you need game time to develop, especially at the quarterback position. So I only see growth going forward with CJ Carr, because he's going to continue to improve, because he's going to get the experience, and the more experience he gets, the better he's going to be.
Well, I'm going to take your word maturation and apply it to 2 people. Number one, Eli Reardon, I think made such an improvement from his first game to the second game. In the first game, my 14-year-old daughter made the comment, "Dad, why is he looking behind him when he's running? Why didn't he just run?" To me, he just seems surprised to get the ball, surprised to be open. But in that game against Texas A&M, ran with a lot more authority, was just a lot more sure of himself when he caught the ball. And sometimes, Reggie, you know how that is. You get in the game and you have one big play, and you sometimes surprise yourself. And then it takes a little while to get comfortable with making plays. And then all of a sudden, you get out there and you expect to make plays. You're mad if you don't get the ball. So I saw tremendous maturation from Eli Reardon. And then we talk about CJ Carr. And I think all of you probably saw the tweet from Pete Sampson, where it talked about when he's in the shotgun, if it's going to be a run, his feet were parallel in his stance. But if it was going to be a pass, he would sort of stagger his stance. And that's just one of those things where you do have to scout yourself. I know you have to scout the opponent, and you got to know what they're doing, and you're looking for any key. But you got to remember, the defense is looking for anything they can find that will give them a key. And I was guilty of it too when I played. I know I used to, when I would sit back in that I formation, when I was going to run the ball, I'd lick my fingers. And then I realized that, you know what, that I'm probably tipping them off that I'm going to get the ball. So then I just started licking my fingers every damn play. So thank God they came out with gloves, and I was able to start wearing gloves. Of course, gloves didn't come till the pros, but it's just one of those things where he's still new to playing, and some of those little details he just has to fixed. And that will happen. That's one of those maturation things. He will realize that, certain things he does is going to tip off the defense because they do, like I said, look for every little thing. But his overall game, I really like his overall game. And I think there's nothing but stardom for this guy going forward.
Yeah, if you had told me before the season that Notre Dame was going to start off 0-2, my first thought would have been, oh, well, CJ Carr's not ready, or they haven't figured out the quarterback situation through 2 games. And it's actually been the complete opposite. Obviously, CJ's made some mistakes. He had that bad interception against Miami in the season opener. I thought there was a couple moments in this most recent game where he missed some guys. I think Gino Guidugli, the quarterback coach, even talked about it when he spoke to the media earlier this week, how there was a play where CJ Carr found Malachi Fields on the sideline. He ran like a little comeback route, caught it first down, which is great, but he missed Will Pauling streaking down the sideline, and I think Allison was closer to covering him than anyone on Texas A&M inside that stadium. So he'll figure that out in time. But the one thing that gets me honestly the most excited about CJ Carr is when I watch other quarterbacks, especially the young quarterbacks like Arch Manning. Not a great start down in Austin. He's really struggling. I think CJ Carr is like light years ahead of him right now. Julian Sand at Ohio State has been solid, but they're playing cupcakes every single week. And then even the veteran guys, like Cade Klubnik, the starting quarterback at Clemson, was projected to be a top NFL draft pick after this season. And CJ Carr's looked better than him. And he's a redshirt freshman. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, obviously, and there's going to be some more lumps along the way. He's probably going to have one game this year where he's like 15 of 32. It happens sometimes to the young quarterback, but based on what he's shown in 2 games, especially relative to the rest of the quarterbacks in the country, it's hard not to get really excited about his future.
But I got to say, I was shocked about Klubnik.
I know.
Yeah, I'm still at awe. Like, what happened to him from last year?
He was great against Texas in the playoff. Like, awesome. Doesn't make any sense.
The thing that is frustrating to me about that stance thing, though, that just seems like, shouldn't one of the coaches notice that? One of the offensive analysts, like anyone on their staff, nobody's ever noticed that he does that. And isn't that part of their job? And I'm not trying to be overly critical, but that seems like that should be something that they are picking up on. And Gino Guidugli was asked that at the media session on Tuesday night, and he got a little defensive, and it was, we're aware of it, we're taking care of it. Well, you should have been aware of it. And like, to your point, Reggie, you said they've been watching him for 2 years. How do you know now? You found out from Pete Sampson's tweet on Twitter on Saturday night.
I think he was resorting to some of that in the game. I didn't see him do that as much against Miami. I think sometimes when you're in the heat of the moment, you kind of forget, like, technique can go by the wayside, or these little things that you're doing that you don't even realize it. So it might have been something that came up during Texas A&M. And I honestly wonder how much Texas A&M knew about that when they figured it out, because it's not like they were having a whole lot of success stopping the offense, even if they knew whether it was a run or a pass.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we got to take another timeout. We'll keep this one quick, and we'll be right back with more. We'll get some more into that offensive line struggles and talk maybe about, I don't know if the college football playoff is still a reality at this point.
Yep. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you are ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays. And this week, my pick on the show was Bills minus 11.5 in Thursday Night Football. We're live right now. That game is tied 14-14. So tune in tomorrow on my show if that bet actually came through. But for now, if you're ready to play today, download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Well, you guys had a chance to talk about who your offensive player was that sort of stood out to you. For me, it was Malachi Fields, wide receiver. He was targeted 14 times. He had 8 receptions, 125 yards. He didn't have a touchdown in this one, but he just was making things happen. He had that 27-yard reception in the third quarter. And, he had that one fumble against Miami, but you're seeing him grow. He was a guy that was brought in as a transfer from Georgia. He had 11 touchdowns for his career there, but he was brought in as a tall, big body and someone with speed that could go downfield. And I think we're going to start to see that now. And it gives CJ Carr a target that he can go after. And we've really been wanting to see a receiver that does sort of separate from the pack, become that go-to guy. And we've not seen that really in quite a few years at Notre Dame. Is Malachi going to be that guy? I don't know, but he definitely took some steps in the right direction. Another thing that I think stood out for him was he had 6 first downs and he caused a missed tackle. And that's big, right? That's doing what the receiver needs to do. He's making guys miss, and he's got that move and the mobility and the speed. So that guy stood out for me. And then you guys touched on CJ. I talked about this on Saturday after the game. Even though he is going to have some mistakes, the clap at the line of scrimmage, that one was really tough. Reggie, that killed Reggie, couldn't take it. But overall, I just think CJ, he is the guy. I saw him coming in as a true freshman, early enrollee when he should have still been in high school. And he just had that command and that presence about him. And to be where he is against the level of talent that he's played against and in the environment he's played in as well, being at Miami in that environment in your very first game is very, very difficult. That is a difficult place to play. It's a difficult place to be as a fan, as a media member. I will say this, it was a lot less intense this time around. The last time we went there back in 2018, literally as media members walking through the tailgates, carrying our bags and our gear, but everything's got, like Notre Dame logos on it. And they were booing us. They're throwing stuff at us in the tailgate. We were like, oh man, this is going to be rough. And we got down on the field and we're at the tunnel and we're watching the guys all lined up. And you had McGlinchey on the team that year. And I mean, that dude is one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen in person in my life. And his eyeballs were like saucers. I mean, they were so huge before they ran out. And it was like, oh no, you just had that gut feeling like this is not going to go well. And I didn't have that feeling this time for Miami. So that's what was so surprising for me, was that they just weren't able to handle it overall. But I do think, kind of getting off topic there, but just that CJ handled that environment well, and he handled his first home game really well, and he's just going to keep building and building. So all good things. And another note, where you guys touched on that, but Purdue gave up 406 yards of total offense to SC last weekend. So that also bodes well for this offense for sure. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the offensive line. That's an area that is a question mark. It was so strong. Notre Dame's been sort of like O-line you, tight end you, but they've had such a great history of really strong offensive lines. But we're seeing some things that are kind of perplexing, and they're giving up some yardage. They're giving up pressures. They're just not always in the right position. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on that. And looking at some of the grades again on Pro Football. PFF, the best graded pass blockers on the team are actually Love and Price. Love at 80 and Price at 78, not offensive linemen.
Not surprised. Unfortunately, I'm not surprised with that. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, my feeling is this offensive line is geared more towards running the football and moving forward. They did appear to get tired versus Miami, especially on their drop back. And I think that's because they're more suited to moving forward. But if you're going to be moving forward, you can't miss blocks. You can't let a nose tackle run free, especially on a 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1. You can't, if you're going to line up in that shotgun formation again, you can't let guys come off the edge and just have a free shot at the running back. Some of that was scheme, but some of that's also that guy needs to be blocked. So I think it takes. When I had Jack Pardee as a coach at the Oilers, his belief was it took about 4 games for you to finally figure out what your personality was, what your scheme was, and so. I know we got 2 games to go, and there's no preseason games, but I think it's one of those they will mesh towards, becoming a more cohesive unit, yeah, not because they need to, but because they have to.
Well, and I always start with the offensive line. And the first thing I look at is the center and the guards. How well are they stepping together? Tandem blocking. And again, the interior. Are they able to handle the interior defensive lineman? And I've just seen too many times where guys are struggling. Ashton Craig, at the center position, one play again. It was a third down. And it was a handoff to Jeremiah Love, and it just seemed like he was out of position. He didn't play with good pad level, and he basically got pushed around and forced Jeremiah to have to take a wider route to get around him, as opposed to him stuffing the guy at the line of scrimmage and not allowing penetration. Wind up, Faison missed his block, and the safety comes up, makes a tackle in the backfield or right at the line of scrimmage. If you look at that play, if it were blocked decently with Jeremiah Love, that play is out the gate. That play is out the gate. And you look again when they were, in the Wildcat or whatever, not a big fan of that because it really – you're talking about keying the defense off is what you're going to do. And again, so I look at that and seeing how those guys are not in sync with each other. You'll have the guard, he's blocking down, and the tackle, he's not coming with him. And again, it creates gaps that allow defenders to run through versus if you're playing together, you're shoulder to shoulder, you stay square, you stay with a good pad level, you have drive. And to your point, Allen, it would be nice to see them do more drive blocking. I know this is the RPO game, and you got to pass that somewhat. But man, how would love to just see them come off flat back and take a defensive tackle and double team his behind and take him back to the safety. That would be beautiful. But I really think that if you give them that opportunity to come off the ball flat back, hit somebody in the mouth, I'm telling you, and you know this, Allen, that for an offensive lineman, when you steamroll a guy and pancake, they'll get no better than that. Yeah. And that it intensifies the energy that gets them hyped up, and they want to go out and really just lay into the defenders. And it just seems like our offensive line is they're a little passive in a lot of regards, and they're catching as opposed to delivering a blow. So, and I think that really affects how they play because they're just not in a position to be the hammer and not the nail.
And Notre Dame has 2 captains on the offensive line, 2 out of 5. I think Billy Shrouth has actually played really well at left guard so far. Maybe the only lineman where you can say he had back-to-back good games. Other players have had their moments in different spots, but I've been impressed with that I've seen from Billy Shrouth, and I'm hoping Charles Jagasaw can get healthy soon because I think once he comes back, that's going to help out Ashton Craig because then he has Billy Shrouth and Charles Jagasaw flanking him. That should help him make his life easier, hopefully regain some confidence. But I've been most disappointed with the tackles. I mean, I understand that they were going through something in Miami. I mean, Anthony Knapp was on the sideline. They said on the broadcast he had ice pack on his back of his neck, on his head, and he was sucking a popsicle. Can't imagine that was a whole lot of fun for Anthony Knapp in that moment. But then you got Emil Wagner at the end of the game just getting torched by Ruben Bain. And I don't know if he was physically compromised, if he was cramping or what, but he just kind of looked like he was going to bear hug Ruben Bain, which is not a real, it's not going to work out more often than not. And then there were some times in the Texas A&M game, like there was this one play that I think it's been posted a couple of times now, but I saw it in the moment too, where Jeremiah Love has a huge hole. He's running off his butt. He's going inside, and there is nothing but green turf ahead of him. Emil Wagner can't hold his block. That player trips up Jeremiah Love just enough so that he falls down. It's a decent gain. It's not a bad play, but if he doesn't make that tackle, doesn't trip off, if he's not able to get off Emil Wagner's block, he is gone. And Notre Dame didn't score any points on that drive. And it's like, you can maybe let that happen if it's a new tackle or something like that, but he's been around. He's a captain. You have to finish that block. So it's not that they're just like being a little passive. They're not finishing plays. I think that's been the most disappointing.
Well, to your point, Tyler, that's what I'm saying is like when you're catching and you're, again, they're upright. And again, when I watched the Miami game, you could tell when the guard or the tackle was pulling because they sat back in their stance. Again, everything is they're receiving the blow as opposed to delivering the blow. And with the tackles, again, when you get to the fourth quarter, they're coming off the edge and they've been running through you the whole, all this time. You get complacent because again, in the kick step that Emil Wagner had, he literally jumped backwards. I've never seen a kick step like that in my life. And I think he's just, again, when you're constantly getting hit and not being allowed to hit someone else, that's very difficult. And I think it kind of creates that reservedness as opposed to when you come off the ball and hit somebody else in the mouth. And I think that's where, again, whether it's the offensive scheme or not, I don't know. But I agree that the tackles, they're taking punishment. And I'm pretty sure that's why Anthony Knapp had the ice pack on his neck because he was getting pounded in his head the whole time.
What was the popsicle for? Moral support?
When you get a little boo-boo, you got to get a little popsicle ice cream. Come on. We all had
We're getting down to our final minutes, guys. So let's take one more time out real quick and we'll wrap things up when we come back.
Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings this same attention to how they craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you could drive with confidence through almost any season. Like their players, they sweat every detail. Because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda. Move and be moved.
All right, we teased it, so we have to talk about it, the college football playoffs. I sent this text to Reggie and Allen right after we got off air on Saturday night, and I saw a stat on ESPN. I've seen some different numbers now since, but the numbers I saw was coming into this game on Saturday against Texas A&M, or excuse me, preseason coming in to the season's opener. Notre Dame had a 56% chance of making it into the playoff, which was in the top 5 for teams in the country of making it into the playoffs. After losing to Miami and now Texas A&M, their chances have fallen to 8%. I've seen some metrics as low as 5%. And Allen, God bless you, you said, hey, they still have a chance.
So you're saying they have a chance, and that's all you want. Because when I look at the top 20, there's still a lot of carnage that's going to go on, especially when teams get in their conference games. It's going to be beating each other up. And I'm like, the winner of the SEC will probably have lost 2 games. The winner of the Big Ten may have lost 2 or 3 games. So if Notre Dame can ascend from here, can win out. We always say when it comes to this playoff, if you're going to lose early, and so Notre Dame's accomplished that. The second thing is strength of schedule. That helps them just a little bit. If we can have USC stay ranked, and maybe a couple other teams on that schedule be ranked, getting, that strength of schedule can improve, but I think that their chances will improve as long as they continue to win, because these other teams still have to play each other, and all they're going to do is beat each other up. And I don't even think there's going to be one team that's undefeated this year.
Well, I'm not even looking at the playoffs because, again, it's just so far out of realm. It's just too many things that need to happen for to get Notre Dame back up there. And to that point about strength of schedule, we've lost to our strength of schedule. We've already lost to it. So that puts you behind the 8 ball right out the gate. But I think the biggest thing for Notre Dame, don't even consider the playoffs. You need to focus on Purdue, one game at a time, and that's how you make it back to your respectability or the opportunity. Is lock in on what you got to do and prepare for the opponent that's right in front of you. Because if you start thinking about anything beyond that, that's when you find yourself in trouble, and you find teams will sneak up on you and beat you. But would you look at it? I mean, there's a chance. I think Miami has they get past Florida State, they have a real shot at going undefeated. Texas A&M, they have a tough schedule, but in the SEC, I just don't think that they're disciplined enough to manage a full schedule in the SEC and win out. But we need those two teams to perform at a high level if we're going to have an opportunity to just work our way back up. But for Notre Dame, from the team standpoint, they need to focus on each one of those games individually, because that's the only way they're going to have the opportunity. And like you said, Allen, we need to see some points being rung up. We need to, again, I'm not a big fan of running up the score, but hey, drop a 50 ball on them and let's go. Let's keep this thing rolling, because they're going to look at that. Your strength of schedule is not great. What did you do against the opponents that, were the weakest on your schedule? So we take care of business one game at a time and really get after them. There is a possibility, but right now, you can't see the forest for the trees. those two L's, that's tough to swallow.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Reggie. I don't even really want to think about the playoff too much at this point in time. However, last year, in the immediate aftermath after Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, I got on my show, and the first words out of my mouth were, well, this season is over. That turned out to be wildly incorrect. And it's kind of become a running joke. Like, well, I thought the season was over, as they just kept stacking up wins. And it turned out the season was far from over. Ended up being one of the most fun Notre Dame football seasons in recent memory. But when I look at this team and the rest of the way, they got a long road. They got to win 10 straight games. And based on what we've seen so far, that is certainly not a given. But last year, the national champion had 2 losses in the regular season. Now, granted, they did have a top 5 win over Penn State. They also had a good win over Indiana at home. But the only team in a Power 4 conference that finished 10-2 and did not make the college football playoff was Miami. And they lost 2 games at the end of the season. And as we've talked about already, if you're going to lose games, do it early and do it to ranked teams. So 2 out of the 3 teams that finished 10-2 last year ended up making the college football playoff. So I think this season is far from over as well. They got to win this weekend. They're going to have a good test against Arkansas. Arkansas put up around 500 total yards of offense and 35 points on Ole Miss in Oxford. That is not going to be easy. But if they win that game, I think it'll restore some confidence. And if they go into that USC game 4-2, there's a chance that we're talking about a 6-0 USC team with wins over a ranked Illinois team, and we'll see what happens with Michigan. But that could set up to be a really big, potentially top 15 matchup. If Notre Dame is able to win that, they're 5-2, they're ranked. Everything is still on the table. But before we get to any of that, how about we get one win tomorrow against Purdue? How about we get the first one? Because it seems like it's been a really long time since we've had that.
Well, I don't want to break your hearts, guys, but just so you know, the Pop-Tarts Bowl representative was seen at both Miami and at Notre Dame Stadium this past weekend. So they could be having Pop-Tarts for Christmas during the bowl season, but just get a win, just beat Purdue, like Bob Davie said.
What is
Just
the
find
Pop-Tarts
a way. I think that one's now Orlando. That used to be the Citrus Bowl and then Camping World Bowl. I think
Is it me or is there too many bowl games?
There's a lot
There's
of bowl
never
games.
enough. Never enough.
Really?
Never too many bowl games.
Oh gosh, I really think there's too many. Because if a team that's, you move on. But if a team has a losing record and they get to go to a bowl, that's too many bowls. you shouldn't be rewarded for a losing season. I just think that we're doing too much there.
We have a high standard at Notre Dame. Now it's like if you're not in the playoff hunt, who cares about the Pop-Tarts Bowl? But we'll see. Hopefully Notre Dame's not in that position. Well, guys, it was great talking with you. We had a lot of fun. We unpacked a lot of stuff. Thank you to our listeners, our viewers, for watching and tuning in. That's going to be a wrap for our Purdue preview episode. Please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast. And if you enjoyed the show today, you can please give this video a like if you're watching on YouTube, or you can rate the show, give us 5 stars. Come on, 5 stars, and leave a review if you're listening to the podcast. And thank you so much. We're going to be back on Saturday after the Notre Dame Purdue game. Thank you for joining us. Go Irish.
First win.
All right. Good stuff, guys.
Dang, we got it right out at 1 hour.
We did.
I didn't see the stream has ended sign that came